Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Will. Hey, this episode is sponsored by Amtrak. No, I'm just kidding. I did take the train back to Raleigh. It's my third time taking the train the last couple of months. I really enjoy train riding. If you ever have a chance and you're going somewhere and you don't want to fight the interstate crowds and you can take a train, I highly recommend it. And anyway, so went up to Raleigh and had a great conversation yesterday with Sean Lilly Wilson at Fullsteam. Sean was on the podcast about a year and a half ago. He started Fullsteam 10 years ago. This is a phenomenal business. His brand is, if you live in the Southeast, for sure you've heard of Fullsteam, or most likely, and other places you may have as well. He's built a very well-respected brand. He makes great beer, has a really cool culture, a fun culture. He's got a lot of people that have been with him a long time because he's a good leader and a good dude. We talked about a few things. We talked about a book that he read 5 years ago that changed the way he manages his company. And he's a creative, and he knew he needed structure, and he needed structure around his leadership and the way they run the business. And so he is doing something called the Entrepreneurial Operating System now, the EOS, that came from this book, and it's a really good conversation we had about that. We talked about other podcasts he listens to. He actually was speaking of one that he listens to, and Katie Button up at Curate in Asheville was on it recently, talking about benefits, particularly healthcare benefits, and what a challenge that is. Katie's got over 100 people, and she talked about the system that they're using to try to do their best to creatively accommodate healthcare needs with their staff. So we got into that a little bit, and that's Kat Kinsman's podcast, a really great podcast that we discussed a little bit. And we also got into just what's happening in the industry right now. You've heard this on this podcast, at least a fair amount recently, with what's happening with mental health, physical health, well-being, taking care of yourself, and how the industry is changing and changing for the better. So, and then we talked about craft beer industry and where is it going and how large will it be and how will that impact the businesses that are already operating, and how do you keep people excited when maybe they grew up in your brewery and which is a good thing to see. Kids growing up around breweries now and hanging out with families. They're a great place to gather, but then do your kids want to go to the same place where they grew up? So really interesting, kind of wide-ranging conversation. We just sat down and talked, no agenda. Really enjoy hanging out with Sean, and then we got a good beer. Makes great beer. So enjoy. More coming soon. Thanks, y'all. Let's see here. We are live. All right. What's up, y'all? I am back at Fullsteam, and I'm very glad to be back at Fullsteam, hanging out with Sean Lilly Wilson. We were just talking. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it's been like a year and a half. And
crazy. I'm sorry that we're in a corporate boardroom. I realize I should have poured you a beer, but it'll make the beer we have.
We'll get one
all that tastier.
No, sure. You don't have like a button you can push where like beer comes and shows up in here?
No, we've learned that makes meetings less productive.
I bet it does. Oh, that's right. That's smart. Yeah, you don't have it sitting in the office here. There you go. And you just had a meeting, you said. You guys just wrapped up one.
Yep. Our weekly leaders meeting tends to be 2.5 hours long, no phones. It's nice. Pretty structured. Yeah.
All right, let's get into that, because we were just talking about being creative and structure, and you just had a meeting about culture, so let's rap about that a little bit.
Okay.
What were y'all doing for 2.5 hours?
We were going through our top priorities list. We have this thing. So as I was mentioning to you, we follow this thing called Traction, or a book called Traction. It's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And really or EOS, really this is the leaders meeting, the level 10 meeting where you bring top issues and you, the lingo and the parlance, identify, discuss, and solve issues. Right?
Why did you pick that book, by the way? I didn't ask you that before we started. What about that book registered?
Everybody was talking about it, like kind of the circles of leadership and management, and the people that I respected were recommending this book.
When was it? When did you first
It was about 5 years ago
Okay.
that I picked up the book Traction, and it was at a time when I knew that we were struggling with consistency, with decision making, with culture, and it kind of got me and pushed me, and it made me realize to be a good leader, I need to follow more structure and have more accountability, because it's not natural to me. Even though I'm CEO, I'm what the book calls the visionary. I'm the creative visionary, and Cal, my COO, is the operator.
Yeah.
So he's the sort of the integrator who makes things happen, and I'm the my title itself, Chief Executive Optimist.
Yes, I love that.
Thanks.
I love that so much.
Thank you. And so it's been very, very valuable. So much so that we're still following the methodology here, 5 years later.
Okay. So this is 10 years in. So about 5 years in, you started out, we were laughing earlier about, making your beer, hustling it around town, kind of doing it all yourself. You're 5 years in, you got a team, but you're just kind of winging it, I guess. I mean,
still winging it. A lot of,
what's can you remember an example or something that really stuck out or registered, like a decision you made or didn't, or needed to make, or, I mean, are there any things or is it just a collection
like 1,000 of them?
Yeah. Okay.
How many megabytes
every
do you
day,
have on that
right,
recording device?
Yeah. Like a daily thing, probably.
Well, I mean, if you look back, sure, my title's Chief Executive Optimist, but it doesn't mean that I always make the right decisions or reflect on. Sometimes it's a reminder to myself because of the stumbles that I've had along the way, and I can definitely think of a ton of them. I don't know how much I want to delve into the dirty detail, not dirty, but just the kind of like sad trombone of running a business. It's a lot about learning from mistakes and how you adjust. And I think overall a big realization, a big epiphany for me was that I needed to be a better leader. I needed to be more consistent, make decisions better, and set goals. I still need to do better at that. It's not in my wheelhouse, but I have a framework for it, and I have people that keep me and ourselves accountable to follow through.
Yeah, you have a framework for it now, and a structure and something to go back to. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
How's the progress? I mean,
good.
Your personal report card, like, how do you feel about it?
Oh, a solid B. It's still on the honor roll, but Dad wants a conversation or two. We're doing okay. I mean, it's a challenging industry, this beer industry, and the good thing for the consumer is that there's so much competition that it means you have to make good beer, you have to have a compelling brand and presence, and I joke that there's no like resting on laurels. There's just no laurels. They don't exist in this industry, and ultimately that's good for the consumer because it means that this competition makes for a lot of exciting product offerings. As long as we keep it fun, as long as people aren't just like, oh, well, what's the next big thing, and what's I visited here once and I might not come back here for another couple of years. That I think there's just so much noise right now that keeping it fun and keeping optimistic is sometimes a challenge.
How many breweries are there in North Carolina now?
Over 300.
Over 300. How many were there when you started?
I think like 60.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So not zero,
but it's grown 500% in 10 years. Where do you, we were just talking about this beforehand too. Y'all are at 10 to 15% or whatever of the beer market, craft breweries. Some folks I talk to think, hey, we might get to 50% in 10, 15 years or whatever. I mean, the growth is, there's lots of growth.
Who are those some people, by the way? I want to talk to them.
I won't name names. Listen to some podcast episodes. I think somebody's mentioned that. That's where I got that from. I was like, really? But who knows? I mean, you really don't know. But it would, from the outside looking in and not knowing nearly enough about the industry, that's part of the why I want to do so many of these episodes this year. There does seem to be a lot more interest from the consumer, from what I've seen, of getting away from brands that we've known and grown up with and have been around, forever. That are, by the way, none of them are owned by American companies anymore.
Right.
Except for Yuengling, which is the largest U.S. brewer, and it's in Pottsville, and it's like only on the East Coast, right? So
there's right next to it is Sierra Nevada, independently owned, family owned, and also some large breweries that are craft and American owned. But
yes,
I guess,
but that's what I'm saying. Those are the higher end of the larger end of this. But the big guys they're all internationally owned now. And what you are doing is you're nimble and you're agile, and you can create, you can create and test and move forward with or not move forward with so many different flavor profiles you're using. And I do want to talk more about this because we got into this, but y'all have done such an amazing job here of using local ingredients and coming up with, what you're doing for the agriculture in North Carolina is
thanks for noticing.
Phenomenal. Heck yeah, dude.
I appreciate
it's
that.
Incredible. It's a great thing. It's a great thing for the local economy. It's a great thing for the state. It's a great model. It probably doesn't work everywhere because certain parts of the country don't have as many. Maybe,
right?
You've got a really dynamic and diverse set of crops here with the climate we have that you can pull from. But nevertheless, you have lots of opportunity to be really creative. But what I was getting to is, I'm down in Casey, South Carolina on this past Saturday. I went to Steel Hands Brewing. It's a customer down there. We were down there. I went by to say hello. It's like Saturday afternoon. It's 1:00. It's rainy. It's nasty outside. Packed. Mm-hmm. Absolutely packed. This is outside, like right outside of Columbia. What struck me as really interesting is there's how many, and I've seen this several times, but how many people bring their families to breweries. Mm-hmm. Kids are growing up. A generation of children are growing up hanging out in breweries. That didn't happen before. And that seems to me like there's a huge, opportunity for those folks to, will they ever even bother drinking, Budweiser or whatever else? I don't know, but
man,
you're creating an audience of people that can go through generations of like, this is the, it used to be maybe the family diner we went to, or now it's like the brewery I grew up in.
Right.
My kids go to this brewery and my grandkids go to this brewery. And
I do think that we've normalized, the craft beer movement has done a very good job of normalizing a healthful respect or healthy respect for alcohol. We're proud of our lead role in that in the area where we made a definitive decision to be family friendly and all welcome. And we took a lot of hits for it early on. It was also the only place in the area that was kind of like redefining what a hangout spot with alcohol could be, as that sort of prototypical beer garden. But we were pretty certain that we could do this. Like it was allowed. It just hadn't been done in the area, and now it's kind of the norm. The challenge really is that it's such the norm now as people become legal drinking age. Increasingly they're familiar with hanging out, maybe even with their parents, and like that normalization makes it almost, I wouldn't say too normal, but it's the whole thing of like, we don't want to drink what our parents drink.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And
yeah.
so,
fair enough.
It's I think the challenge for the craft beer industry, and why I sometimes question whether we're going to get to like 40%, is that wave sustainable? Is there going to be another wave of other things? And what is craft ultimately? Like I think about the emergence of seltzer, right, which is technically made from grain typically, or sugar, and sugar is considered a grain. And so, is like the White Claw and Truly and then the craft derivatives, is that craft? Like who owns that in the stores, and how does that count towards something that we're really passionate about, like independent craft beer, and how much do we pay attention to like the trends that feel a far distance from what I got into this 10 years ago, which was to support North Carolina farmers, to encourage them to grow grain and to brew beer with sweet potatoes and to forage for persimmons. And we've told that story now for a decade, and it's a known story. And it's you don't do it just for the story, but you think about the normalization of this endeavor we call craft beer and what might be next. And so, as you can see, it occupies a fair amount of my brain space and my teams and certainly a lot of the breweries around the state.
Well, let me ask you this, Sean. Do you think about, because you've built a really well-regarded, highly thought of brand with Fullsteam.
Thanks.
So are there, no doubt. I mean, if you're not in North Carolina, or if you're not from the Southeast, you may not have heard of, I don't know, but if you've heard of Fullsteam, you've heard something positive. There's no doubt about it. And y'all do a great job. Everything I ever see from you, from your social media your building, your bottling, it's just all really well done. It's very creative. It's very unique, and your quality of your products always consistently excellent. So, I mean, you've done, you've checked all these great boxes, but this brand that you have, and you have this audience that you've created, do you have other things you can do with that brand outside of beer or craft beer?
Yeah. Well, thank you for all the kind words. I think the main thing for us is kind of understanding what we stand for and getting back to that book Traction and kind of all this whole process of kind of knowing what we stand for. It was the big first step was culture and kind of our values and what we stand for as a company. And then there's, the why we exist. What's our 10-year vision? What's our unique niche? Why do we do what we do? It makes me think of Simon Sinek and the Golden Circle. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And we want people to really care about the Southern farm and the Southern wild and the local community, right? And so that's why we're big supporters of course, we love Durham and we love our neighborhood, but we love the vibe and the kind of the diverse, progressive nature of this city and what it stands for, and that spirit of can do, and the kind of the resilience of Durham. But we also love the North Carolina wild and that connection that we feel to the land and to one another, right? And we just happen to express that through beer, right? So we express our love of the land and of our desire to connect with one another, and beer is our pathway to that. And are there other beverages or other things that we do that could be natural extensions of that feel true to the Fullsteam ethos? I mean, literally, we were just talking about this in the meeting of the meeting we just talked about. That was a big chunk of it. It's exploring what that means, what that could mean for us, as we look at product diversification and trends and all of that. And how do we stay true to who we are?
Yeah, that's not easy.
It's not, but it's really fun. I mean, when you have engaged people who care about a mission and a purpose, if you're just in it to grab a buck, that's one thing, nothing wrong with it. But the process is much, much different. The analysis is much, much different. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have to put on our finance hat and ask critical and analytical questions, but we don't come out of it with some kind of hurdle rate analysis, right? That's not what we got into this business for. I mean, it's, as somebody who's had started in the service industry at the age of 14 and worked in it for many, many years and is still doing it to this day. We're in it for people and for the agriculture that I mentioned. And so, it's I'm very, very fortunate that we have a number of employees that care just as much about this as I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that so? When you spend your meeting and you talk about a lot of these things, tell me about the structure you're placing around these decisions. How have you learned to create a process for yourself and the team for how to make a decision, why you make a decision, what that decision means, what decisions work well for what, that whole process. I'm really curious about that.
It's funny. We have people who new folks, when they come into one of these, what we call level 10 meetings, a lot of times they expect like an agenda, like a printed agenda, and we don't come in with a printed agenda. We don't have like we have a structure. We go through and we start out with good news, and we go around the table sharing a little bit of good news to kind of like break the ice and get things rolling. And we do like other things like
good news, like business good news or personal good news, just
good
whatever's
news.
going on. Okay.
Yeah, whatever's going on in your life.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Get everybody in a good place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. You get it. Yeah. And then we do like scorecards, like KPIs and customer employee headlines, and did we do our to-dos from last week? It's pretty like structured. The majority of the meeting is this thing called IDS, identify, discuss, and solve. So we go around and we identify issues that we want to talk about, and then discuss them and then solve them. We have a quarterback, somebody who kind of like runs the show. That's Cal, the operator, not me. Our integrator, our COO is the one running this particular meeting, and we go through this process where we do this identify what is the issue that we're talking about, and then the vast majority of it discussing the issue at hand, and then the most challenging part is the so what factors, solving it. Like you can discuss ad nauseum, but if you don't solve, you don't come out with any kind of like so what to do's, then it's kind of a waste of time.
How do you when you identify though, you could come up with 1,000 things, or you could come in. How do you do a so what on the front end? Like this is a problem. Well, okay,
it's a job of the facilitator to prioritize.
You're a referee. Yeah.
And the biggest challenge, I don't know if this is too much in the weeds or if this is helpful or whatever.
No, I think it's very helpful.
Yeah,
a lot of people. It's just. I mean, this is it. Like this is the daily.
It's the grind, man. Like this is how you have to do stuff, and it's like I'm a creative person. I never thought I'd be like talking about these things, but as I mentioned to you before we started recording, that order and organization facilitates creativity. That structure is what gives me space to be creative, right? So I'm not as like frantic and frenetic, but I've done the work that needs to get done, and then I have cycles and I have brain space to be creative. And so I'm very thankful for structure because it doesn't come naturally to me, right? But to get back to that question, I think it's really to make sure that we don't come into a meeting with a bunch of updates, right? Because I think the tendency from a human nature standpoint is we all want to justify our existence. So the tendency is to go around in a room of people who, are educated and decently paid, if not well paid, and we want to prove ourselves, right? And like, I've been doing some really important stuff, right? But updates don't really benefit the group, right? If you're sometimes I do this and I think about when I'm in a 2-hour meeting and I go around and I like tally up how much I'm paying for this meeting right now.
Oh, that's
in
funny.
Terms of like people's, prorated hourly rate and all. And it's like, it makes you kind of think like, all right, let's do stuff out of this. Like, let's not just have a meeting to give ourselves updates, but like, power through and like take the brain power here and the fact that we have a salesperson and a tavern person and a production person all together. So like, what can we do about that to make decisions, right? And not just talk about issues.
Dude, how many people do you have in the meeting?
That's 6 right now.
Yeah, it would probably be too easy to maybe back into the math. I was sitting there thinking it might be cool to go, okay, a 2-hour meeting, it costs us this amount. So how do we as a group think that we can get that amount of return? Otherwise, like, we shouldn't meet, right? Like,
that's right.
Everything should go to make sure that 2 hours pays for and then some that right there. That amount.
And that sort of tough love is maybe not cultural for us. It could work well for another type of organization. For us, we do rate the meeting at the end and we aim for 10, and all that. So we have our own metrics that we bring into it. And there's times when we acknowledge that we were far from a 10 and why.
Yeah.
But
there you go. You got a metric. You got some way to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Fun. The Meetings Podcast. Who knew?
I think, look, man, this is because look, here's the thing. People that listen to this, they want to own a restaurant or a brewery or just, they want to own some kind of a hospitality business, or they own one, but they're fairly new and they're wanting to learn from folks like you that have been at it for 10 years, or they've been at it for 20 years, but they go, I can always learn, right? You never stop. That they're going, all right, I've been at this 20 years, but man, we still don't have enough structure with our whatever it is. This stuff's really helpful to the people that listen to this stuff. I believe that very much. Otherwise, it's just repetitive. It's like, oh yeah, so I think getting in the weeds on some of that stuff's really valuable. It helps me a lot, man. I don't know if y'all listening, and let me know if you disagree. Okay, and now one of the things that we were talking about before this, folks, by the way, we were actually literally talking about what things should we discuss today, because we want to make this meaningful, of course, and have it be a good use of your time. And one of the things that you were saying is that you were listening to a podcast recently, which you're learning from other people in the industry as well. Same deal. Benefits, healthcare, health insurance. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. It's
let's advertise that podcast. What was it called?
That was Kat Kinsman's The Communal Table. It's on the food and wine network.
I've heard of that.
Kat's a longtime friend, and she was interviewing Katie Button of Curate, and our paths have crossed over the years, and just wanted to hear what she had to say, and just a really great, podcast. Not to whatever, not listening. Audio is a zero-sum game. You can only listen to so many podcasts, and I certainly don't want to take away from your great endeavors and all of that.
I love telling people about other podcasts.
Oh,
so
cool.
I think, listen to that. So I think it's a really good podcast. I've heard of it. I haven't listened to that podcast yet, but I've heard of Kat. I've heard of that podcast. Somebody else has mentioned that on this before.
No, she just does such a good job. She's very empathetic, which is one of our core values, and she and Katie talked at length about wellness, which has been a hot topic in the hospitality industry. And
how do you wellness? Mental, physical, both? Just overall taking care of yourself, because y'all work so darn hard and it's hard to find balance.
I mean, it's like keep going. Yes. Yeah, I think their particular slant was in this podcast, which is definitely worth a listen, is around mental health and well-being.
Okay.
But also extended into what Katie and Curate, the team, are doing for health benefits, which has just been an area of challenge for us. It's something that we haven't solved, and we need to. And it's one of those things where that I took some. I was on a walk, but I took some notes on my phone and went back to it and immediately talked to our HR person, and we're just learning from the successes and trials and tribulations of others who have overcome some of these areas that we haven't solved yet. So they do a direct primary care program, and I can't speak as an expert. I'm still learning, but it was enough of like a nudge of like, here's what we do.
Direct primary care program.
Yeah. Okay. So this isn't going to be right, but it's enough of an impetus for me to like learn from and investigate more and see if we could do something similar. But essentially it's they provide a subsidy for their employees to join a membership of a doctor who essentially you're in a monthly membership, like a gym membership or Netflix or whatever. And you pay a monthly fee to have access to a doctor should you need that.
Okay.
Right. And whether that doctor takes care of a cold or a broken bone or whatever, it's a way to sort of direct and thus bypass some of the insurance elements, but still provide medical care. And if I've gotten elements of that wrong, please, send an email to mark@aviatorbrewing.com. No, I'm just kidding.
That's funny.
Thanks. No, I mean, I'm just trying here, right? And I'm trying to learn, and I think that's an area that we need to improve on. And I'm very mindful of the fact that, and I think it's awesome that in this instance and in other instances, a lot of the it just seems that a lot of the companies that do things the right way are woman led, and I'm very mindful of that is all. It's just like, I'm like, dang, they're just getting it. They're doing it right. And we all have our areas where we struggle and we're not doing as well, but particularly in healthcare and in mental health. Cheers to Curate and Chef Katie Button for taking that on.
Cheers to Curate. How many people does she have?
Oh my God, I was stunned when she said 125.
What?
I know, right?
Oh, I was going to say she must not have more than like 30 or something like that if she's got
No, I don't know. Full-time, part-time, but they have an event space, a restaurant, a very large restaurant, and a bagel place. So.
I didn't know Curate was that big.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Now that plan, is the restaurant or the company, the business, putting the money into that?
I believe so. Again, I don't want to speak for...
But is it like an amount that gets... So they're paying a monthly subscription or whatever per employee. Mm-hmm. Okay. So so it's a physicians network that...
I think, like, my understanding of it is that certain doctors have said, I'm out. I'm not going to participate in the system, right? I'm going to go direct, and I'm going to have this subscription model, and I'm going to give more direct care to and time and attention to to my my customers, and it seems to be working for the most part. I mean, everything's so broken, right? It's like we shouldn't have to have this as an offshoot. I wish we had this more holistically. For me personally, it might not work just because I have pre-existing conditions, and I'm older than my average employee here. So
they're bulletproof, man. They don't go that much. They just need something just in case. Well, okay, that's really interesting. I like that model a lot. I mean, you're on a subscription to your health insurance company now. You're just paying them money every month, but
right.
I like that a lot. Plus the like we have this thing now where I don't know, some big health company bought whatever it is in Charlotte, but anyway, like I can't go to the doctor. I have to like go for one reason. Like if I have two things, I can only go and they can only talk to me about one thing, and if I want to talk about the other thing, I have to. I mean, you're just like, dude, really?
Yeah, it's so
like,
broken.
This is so ridiculous. So it's good to hear doctors thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
I know many of them want to because they all, many of them that I've spoken to, just they're as sickened by it as we are. But okay, so they put money in, and then they're paying every month, and then there's that money is allocated towards the visits that people make.
Yeah, that's my rough understanding. And then other things like they're paying for mental health and wellness visits, and even down to not to rehash the entire podcast, but down to like they'll pay employees for like dental care because they know the importance of good dental care for overall physical health, which is very true. I mean, that's like good teeth is very like oddly
a lot of stuff starts there.
Yeah, right.
People don't know that, but like heart disease and everything else,
exactly.
Don't take care of your teeth, man. You might have big problems.
So anyway, it's a really good listen, and two people that I really admire, and if you get into the Kat's podcast, Communal Table, a whole bunch of people that she interviews in food and beverage. A lot of chefs and a lot of makers and all of that, but definitely for people like you and me that care about giving back and doing good, and I imagine a lot of your listeners, I think you'll find this a rewarding podcast.
Yeah, check it out. I'm going to go listen to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big thing right now. Mental health is a big thing too, and a huge thing.
And a lot of advancements in being more open about mental health, like with Steve Palmer in his book Say Grace. I don't know.
Dude.
Right?
I was just going to ask you if you're familiar with Ben's friends. So clearly you are. I mean, so back in December, Steve came up to Crawford and Son, and Scott and Steve and actually two of Scott's employees joined. But I moderated a discussion with them about, it was a book signing,
Yeah.
but about substance abuse, about addiction, about a path to sobriety, about Ben's friend. It was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
It's on the podcast. It was really good.
Yeah, I wanted to attend that one. I was out of town, but I think very highly of not only of them as leaders and outspoken, but just for their honesty and forthrightness in the topic.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I mean, they don't hold. They.
Oh no, yeah, right.
They don't hold anything back. I mean,
Yep.
Scott said, he said, I had, he said one of the hard, I would be at like, I had more fear of admitting that I had a problem to the people I knew and loved than I did of going into the rough part of town at 3:00 in the morning to buy drugs. Like, he's like, that's how hard that is. That mental challenge of saying, it's not just admitting you have a problem to yourself. That's the first part, but then it's being willing to go to the people you care about, the people you love, the people that work for you. Like,
Yeah.
I got a problem.
Right.
And this industry has been really hard on people for a long time. And it was sort of like, hey man, like, work hard, play hard, show up, and then go out and get trashed or whatever. And, just people were just, a lot of bad things happen. So I really admire those guys and a lot of the other folks in this space that are, like you said, very honest about it, and they're doing something. Ben's friends that thing's taken off.
Yeah.
They're like all over the place all of a sudden,
And it's setting a tone for a kinder service industry, and that's the only way this thing is going to work. Because I think people are really evaluating, like, wait, why would I want to be in an industry known for, either toxic masculinity or abusive power structures, super late nights, no family time, and I think to sustain this industry and to keep it meaningful and to attract the right talent, it's got to be kinder. It's got to be gracious, and it's got to acknowledge the challenges of substance abuse and its historical roots in and kind of how the service industry worked. I'm glad that I spent some time in that as growing up, and seeing it and dealing with it. But I felt like I was in a transition, and I feel like we have an opportunity as we continue in the service industry and setting a different tone.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job. There's a lot of work to be done, but y'all, the industry collectively, particularly people around here, I hear a lot of this, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, the Carolinas. There's just a lot of leadership in that area, and it's a great thing to see because there's so much potential that is lost when people, lose their life or lose their job or lose their career or, all these things that can happen from that. And it is hard. You're around. that's what you do. You make beer and but what y'all do is you're fostering a responsible culture and a responsible environment. I love the fact that you don't even have beer here that's a wise decision, right? It's, it's respecting this and, but that part of the industry does have a long way to go. But what you're seeing now is folks like you and Scott and Steve and Ashley Christensen and Cheedy and all these people that are using the platform and brand that you've built to advocate for something better, not just in your business, but in your society and in the culture. And
yeah. And I can I say something about that?
Yeah.
I think the real challenge is getting people to care. Like, we all care, and we know the importance, and I think we do a good job of recruiting and using that as a tool for hiring and that sort of reputation, right? But getting the consumer to care in the sort of no laws when there's drinking clause meme driven era, and also maybe in a time and in a year where everything feels ugly. That trying to make this rise to the top level for the consumer of like, oh wait, I should maybe consider going to that restaurant or buying that product or supporting that business because they do this. It's harder. It's just harder because everything is just awful. So,
yeah, you know what?
Says the chief executive optimist.
I was going to say, man, remember that O and that CEO. You should keep that. It's hard. But you know what? I tell you what, though. I hear you. But that's the time when you double down on this stuff because I believe, believe you have, but I believe it is, look, let's put it this way. Scott had like 35 people there that night, invitational or not invitational, but they sold tickets to it or whatever. Mm-hmm. So he sold however many seats they had. People were blown away. Now I know they bought a ticket to be there because it was interested them and they wanted to be there. So you've got the right audience and their captain and everything. I'm telling you, man, like people were like, I never really thought of that. I knew people, but like they did the humanity part of that. And it's one thing to hear like, oh, restaurant people, they work hard but they have these issues and there's instability issues and there's substance abuse and all that. It's one thing to hear that, but when you start hearing those stories, and that's why those guys telling those stories in such a raw way is so important because then you connect to that person, at a much more human level, and it resonates a lot more. It's like, what was that? What is it? Million deaths is a statistic, and one is an outrage or whatever it was. I think it was Stalin said that or something. It was a horrible. But my point is,
I know. Okay.
The story, that one person's story, resonates much more than like, X% of people in the hospitality industry have substance abuse. You can't wrap your arm around, or wrap your mind around that. You sit there and listen to those guys, and you're like, no, this is really interesting. Now I'm going to go tell my friends and family about this, and maybe the conversation begins. And the more people are hearing that, the more like, why don't we go to restaurants where that matters, where they care, where they are advocating for something better for their staff and
it's making me think. How do we, besides those one-on-one stories, and you mentioned the 35 people, and there's that, of course, network effect, but how do we find, how do we know, how do you discover, especially when you travel, like how do you discover the places that are, and this is sort of a rhetorical question, maybe there is an answer, but how do you discover the places that are good to their employees, that have an environmental sensibility or a community give back and all of that? There's not an easy way to do it in a metric-driven world like Google reviews and Yelp and all of that. There's certifications, of course, and like we're founding members of the Durham Living Wage, and there's our friend Seth is at Bull City Burgers, a B Corporation, something that we aspire to do, but there's not an easy way to kind of search that stuff out. And some of it's subjective, right? But so are reviews, we have Untapped, right? Yeah. We have we can review beers, but
you can't review. Right. That's an interesting point. Well, okay. Well, first we have to get people thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like
the importance of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like you got to have your you need your staff and your loyal customers. Like the more it's just a one-on-one knocking on doors, telling that story more and more, and the more people are hearing about it, it's almost like starting a political campaign or something. You don't start with 1 million people, you start with one, and then you just build from there. Yeah. And the other thing is, it's interesting. If people were looking for that, you sure could. There's your product idea for somebody right there. It's got some time and some focus. Figure out a way to, I don't know, let staff anonymously rank where they work and how
certainly
they're treated.
Like Glassdoor.
Glassdoor is something for sort of corporate America,
right? And for hiring and all. And who knows? It's not like I'm trying to say that everything should be ranked and rated. I actually think we need to take a break from that, for sure. And just kind of like enjoy the moment and not try to compare things to others. But I know that me personally, when I travel to a new area, I'd love to know places that do right by their employees, or maybe that's a Ben's Friends thing of if they're hip to that, if they have employees that care about issues like that, then of course almost by proxy or by definition, they're going to be the kind of places that I want to support. And just waiting that out, not waiting, but sorting that out. It's harder and it takes time, and we're all busy people, and sometimes we just want to, eat delicious food and not have to think, and that's or drink tasty beer and not have to think too hard. And we know our stories, but getting the customer to care in a hurried world is a challenge. I'm up for it, but I'm 10 years into it, and we're still figuring out how to do it better and how to do better by to our employees.
Yeah.
For them.
Keep doing it, man. Just
Thanks.
keep doing it. I mean, the story you started telling with local ingredients, and I mean, look what's happened with that, man. That's
$500,000 since we started. $500,000 towards North Carolina agriculture, and I'll feel really successful when we can say, in a year we'll spend $500,000. But since 2010, we've purchased $500,000 in local farmed ingredients.
It's incredible, man.
Thanks.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. Where it happens too is it happens through stuff like this. I mean, we're talking about it, and we'll, like you said, the podcast now is a democratization of. I mean, think about that. You can maybe somebody will pick up a podcast or start their own. Really with that kind of a focus or something. You never know, but have the conversations and people with energy and optimism and enthusiasm like you. And there's a lot of them around here that are Look, Ben's Friends alone. I mean, that was like Mickey and Steve, and they just had that one chapter down there, and it's like a slow burn. And now I think I saw on Instagram the other. I mean, they're gonna, they'll be in like 50 states before you know it.
Yeah.
They'll be in every big city in the country before you know it. I mean, that's got legs.
Yeah,
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good thing. That's a good start for this stuff. It's a good platform to get started. Just having the industry recognize and do something about it. And, take care of its people. Mental health, man, is a big deal too.
I'm glad you and I are talking about it. I'm glad that the industry is talking about it and acknowledging it. Like I said, it's important for the long-term viability of this industry. And the more honest we are about it, the more we bring people into the industry who care about others. So it feeds itself.
I'm a big advocate for the industry, man. I think this industry is amazing, and I hope all my kids will at least spend time in this industry. It's the one place where it is so meritocratic. It does not matter where you came from, what school you went to, what color your skin. Just none of that stuff matters. All that matters is, man, I'm going to take good care of people. I'm going to be a good teammate. I'm going to put my heart into this and work hard. And it's like, all right, man, bring it on. There's so much you can learn, and there's so much you can learn with dealing with people from all different backgrounds that you work with, and then people from all different backgrounds that you serve. Where else do you do that? You don't do that anywhere else. It's like not to that scale, not to that level. I don't think. I mean, I think it's awesome. I think it's great. A lot of great people in this industry that they're smart, they're hardworking. Maybe they didn't have some of the breaks in life that maybe I had or maybe you had early on that, just lucky breaks or whatever else. There's a lot of really great people in this industry, man. I've been going around talking to people for a long time now, and I'm constantly blown away with how smart, driven, thoughtful, caring, interesting, intentional people work their butts off in this industry, harder than any other industry I can think of off the top of my head that provides such a great service for the community. People probably don't recognize all the time how meaningful that is, but I think my kids, when I talk to them, I feel like people are starting to put more thought into this. They care more about where they go. They care more about where they hang out. They care more about the types of businesses they support. And man, as everything's getting fast and automated and AI driven, and you got the big chains, and McDonald's will have like one dude in there one day with like a bunch of machines, and all that person will do is just like fix the machines, and they'll do everything. Fine, good. One end of the barbell, we need that. Great. The other end over here is slow down, humanity, hospitality, relationships, conversations, thoughts, connection, caring, love, community. That's that's never, as long as we're around, man, that ain't gonna come. Like that's what we need as humans.
Right. And we're at Fullsteam very thankful that we have a half a dozen employees in front of the house that have been with us for 7+ years, doing this, and to have that familiar face and those people, not only for the customer, but for our team and that continuity. I'm just very, very thankful for them.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
absolutely. I got my places, man, in Charlotte, man. I go like, them. They start to get to know you.
Right.
Feel like Norm, from Cheers. Remember Norm?
I do. Yeah.
It's a good feeling, man. It's a really good feeling when you walk in and you see this smiling face of, Katie, who's there, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that matters to people.
Yeah.
It matters to me a ton.
Yeah.
Really.
Absolutely.
But, well, okay. So let me ask you this. Who are some of the other people that you either, follow or know in the industry, either locally or around, whether it's Katie there in Asheville or around the country? I know you go to some of these conferences and things like that. Who else do you kind of stay or do you follow or just respect and admire?
Oh, man. It's interesting. A number of years ago, I participated in this thing called BASE at UNC, and it was an entrepreneurial network with a kind of a mentorship role, and I was the mentee, right? And my mentor was Scott Blackwell, who was just wrapped up his Immaculate Baking Company venture, and they basically they did cookies, and he and I got to know each other, and he was my mentor, and I learned a lot from him and enjoyed him, and he and his wife Ann Marshall ended up opening Highwire Distilling, not Highwire Brewery, but Highwire Distilling in Charleston, and he's been a very good friend and guide and mentor over the years, for sure. So if you're in Charleston, check them out. They are just moving to a new space on Hughie near Palmetto Brewing Company, an expanded distillery there. Shout out to them.
Highwire Distilling. All right.
Yeah, Highwire Distilling. Let's see, my good friend Roy Milner, who led up Blackberry Farm Brewery, is somebody that I rely on and have lots of good, deep, meaningful interactions. So I follow what he's up to. He's doing some cool stuff. Carl and Sarah over at Biscuit Love in Nashville, amazing people. Really, a lot of this comes from my involvement and connection with the Southern Foodways Alliance.
Just about to ask you if you're okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are you going to the thing in March?
I think so. Yeah, because it's the future of restaurants, and it's very timely. So it's definitely on my radar, and I always go to the symposium in October in Oxford, Mississippi.
I think I'm going to go to the one in Birmingham.
Yeah.
I'm going to join.
Yeah.
SFA is awesome. I love it. Everything I've seen. I watched Van's speech yesterday. The one from, that was good.
Yeah. Yeah. It was wonderful to be there in person. And, he's such a stoic individual, and he's just like, I know he was nervous, but I also know that he knows his story well. And when it comes from the heart, it was just a lot of all the emotions, all the feels, as the kids say. But it was really wonderful to be there in Oxford and to encourage him along and give him a hug, and then just watch him deliver from the heart. And
dude, he crushed it. It was so good.
But that's that's the type of people that we're thankful to have speaking for us in the industry these days, and to have representing as the face of the industry, kind, diverse, representative of an America and a service industry that I love.
Tell us about the SFA. Because I bet a lot of people listening don't know what the SFA is. I think it's a really cool organization from what I've learned. I mean, like I said, I'm going to join. I think I'm going to go in March. I'm definitely going to go in the fall.
Sure.
But
yeah.
Talk a little bit about it. It's got a cool backstory.
So the Southern Foodways Alliance is grew out of the Ole Miss, basically. It's essentially within the department there, and I won't get the structure of it exactly right, but it's a quasi-academic organization that really explores Southern foodways and the stories that are interwoven from immigration to food traditions from the South. You know, the South is this rich and storied food tradition that's inexorably linked to racial tensions and economics and slave migration and all these deep things that are pretty unique to food in the South. Mm-hmm. And the SFA takes those head on, explores the topics through the lens of food. I think I did that pretty well in a way that...
I think you did it very well. Yeah,
its executive director, head honcho, John T. Edge, would not kick me out of the room.
No, I think John T. Edge would be proud, man. I think you nailed it. Yeah.
We've been very fortunate. In fact, early on, so we launched in 2010, but back in 2008, we took some test beer, some sample beer to Symposium. We were really fortunate to be able to preview some of our offerings there, and that gave us a lot of exposure and access to people and opportunities that I think about to this day. I'm blown away by the people that I continue to meet, but certainly in the early days as we were getting this thing going, how fortunate we were. Like, I have a picture of me in a pre-tattooed Sean Brock, at an event.
Really?
that we poured beer in Charleston as a fundraiser for the Oxford American. And, who knew? You kind of know even then, like, this guy's going places, but, it was pretty neat,
Where is he now? Is he in
Nashville?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a new book, South, which is a really wonderful, exploration of Appalachian foodways and recipes, of course. But he's got several projects in the works in East Nashville.
Okay, good deal. Yeah. Got took off. That's great. That's cool. A lot of good people down there. I've heard of so many great things. I was like, man, I want to be a part of that. It's just no reason not to. It's too much good stuff coming out of that.
For sure. And its tentacles are amazing, from just the chefs that it has hosted and supported and lent a voice to. You mentioned Chidi. She's, heavily involved and connected with the SFA. And I mentioned Katie Button in that podcast. And I think about the fact that another one of my kind of heroes and people that I follow is Jose Andres, up in DC, of course, and the humanitarian efforts that he spearheads, particularly through environmental disaster and recovery, be it Puerto Rico or post hurricanes or whatever. Like, the guy is everywhere. I don't know. You see him, or what I'm talking about. Yeah. But Chef Katie Button staged for Jose Andres at El Bulli, and her now husband worked for him in DC, and I first met Felix, Katie's husband, at a Jose Andres restaurant where we took our pawpaw beer up, our beer made with foraged pawpaws, as our first non-North Carolina account, and just handing that sixtel over to Jose Andres and trying furiously to take a picture of, and just capture the moment. It was just really cool. So I'm mashing together stories here of people and connections and the people that matter to me, and the industry associations that matter to me. And it is, as you hear time and time again, one big family, and we are really connected by a love of food and of culture and of meaningful connection. Jose Andres wanted to put our pawpaw beer on for a reason. Like, he loved the story of the American pawpaw, and people who care about that, they tend to care about other things, naturally curious people. I think that's it. Yes. Naturally curious people. Right. That's what we try to really hire and look for. And the people that I gravitate to are people who, instead of like, They're just people who ask why is that? And like you said, I'm curious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the end.
The end. There's a guy that was in our first book, Red Hot on the River. He and Jim and Mary Beth, they own Red Hot on the River. It's up in Irvington on Hudson, New York. I'll never forget. I asked him, I said, what? This was like 10 years ago, because I was doing the interviews for that first book in 2009. And one thing I asked everybody is, what type of people do you hire? And he said, I hire curious people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd either answer that way, or I'd like to think
that's what he said.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
Okay, you hire. He goes, that's it, man. Like if you're curious, I can teach you to serve. But if you're a curious person, I want you around here.
Yeah,
like you're going to make our team better. And I was like, wow, that's just so simple and so clean and so clear, but it's so true and meaningful, and it is what you ultimately find probably in most businesses that you really admire, or they probably have a lot of people that are just really curious, and they don't settle for the way things are, right. And they want to think about things and make things better. And so your business and your group of peers and people you admire and the SFA and a lot of the people around here and a lot of people in this industry across the country are that, you're creative, you're curious, you're thoughtful, you're caring, you're not just in it to build a business and grow it and sell it and exit, and you're in it for something bigger. Mm-hmm. And in the community that you all facilitate is amazing. And dude, thanks for what you're doing, and keep doing it, man. And the grind and the weeds and all that. Sometimes I know it's probably like, God, but man, you're pushing the ball forward and you're doing a great job, and y'all will continue to. And that's what wins, like ultimately. And that. I don't have to tell you that, but that's
good to hear.
Even the times when you're like, oh, really? What?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like that mentality, that thoughtfulness, that care, and that love that you have for your team and your community, and this, our economy and our state, our country, like all that stuff, it at every level, that matters and that wins every time.
I appreciate
without question, no doubt about it.
Appreciate you saying
not,
that.
Man, like we may as well not even be.
I do feel that way sometimes. In that chief executive optimist title, I need that as my own reminder.
We all do.
Yeah, because running a business is hard.
Yep.
And challenging and rewarding and everything. So I don't know. I want to slip in a quick story on interviews. Can I?
Yes.
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely.
So anybody who's listening who ends up interviewing, if you were to ever interview at Fullsteam, now you have the inside track. I ask one question all the time, getting back to curiosity in interviews for a job.
Yeah.
Right. I always ask the question, what's a persimmon?
Yeah, you told me that last time.
Damn it, I'm repeating myself already.
No. I remember that because I thought that was really cool. I like that. That's a big indicator for you.
At least I'm consistent.
Yeah. Well, that's good. No, that's absolutely.
Because it's about curiosity. It's about like, are they curious about their surroundings? And then also, are they curious enough to like explore our website and see that we brew a persimmon beer?
Yeah.
Right? But that's cool that you remember that.
No, for sure.
And that's kind of what we hope is that the person asking, it also throws them a little off their game, which is kind of fun, because it's an unexpected. So there's a little side benefit of like asking that kind of unexpected question and see how they react to it. Not in a stressful way, but just like, how do they handle that question? But mostly I'm looking for people who are curious.
If you're listening and you're interviewing Fullsteam or any other place, go to the website first, read their story, know what they care about, because that's what they think about every day. And you should know that. Like, that's a big deal. Like, are you just there for a job and a paycheck, or are you there to try to add something to the business and be a part of the story that business is telling?
Right.
Two very different approaches. But as a business owner, the latter there is exactly what you're looking for. That's the person that gets the job.
Have you ever talked to anybody on your podcast about handwritten notes?
No. What do you mean about handwritten notes?
After the interview.
Oh.
Writing a handwritten note, or even better, having one kind of at the ready with the address on and the stamp on, so you just fill out the card itself and put it in the mail right after you finish the interview. Like, the person who does that is so much more likely to get the job because the vast majority of people don't even email anymore to say thank you.
Are you serious? Really?
Yeah. Well, do you get? I mean,
we have 5 people, and we've had 5 people for 12 years, man. I don't
Jeez.
never interviewed anybody.
5 people. For 12
I don't know.
Years.
I wouldn't even know how to interview somebody.
Yeah.
So
you have a
want
very
a job?
different business model than we do. Yeah, I mean, I think people don't know how to interview very well, or how to seal the deal, right? So, inside scoop. If you really want to separate yourself, write a handwritten thank you note. It just goes a long way.
Oh, they go so far, especially nowadays. Nobody writes anything.
That's what I'm saying. Zig when they zag. Right.
Yes.
Do something that the vast majority of the people you're competing against or the industry you're part of isn't going to do because they're all doing something. So
Yeah, we do that for sure. It's so funny when you say that, and we'll wrap this up. But so like these hats and stuff, I bring them to you because you're here and I'm going to see you in person. But a lot of times I'll just box these up in like one of those medium flat rate boxes for the post office, and I'll send them to a customer in Colorado or Texas or California or wherever.
Right.
Some good, however, whatever reason I decided to do it, whoever they are and why I decided to do it. But I always I have this, schedule fly stationery, and I write a note, thank them for the business. I can't tell you how many times, Sean, man, I write it. I'm like, all I have to do is say thank you very much for the business. We love y'all. We appreciate the chance to serve you. Call me if I can never do anything for you. Will. And I write myself in. It takes me 3 times sometimes because I can't write because I don't write enough,
Right.
so it's it literally this ridiculous concerted effort I have to make. Because I look at my handwriting, I'm like, I can't even read that. And I scratch it up, and I start again, and I get mad. My wife's like, "What, dude? Why are there 5 thank you cards in the trash?" I'm like, I had to start over, man. I couldn't write, but it really does make a difference because you don't get that stuff anymore.
Right.
Nobody does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good tip. There you go.
Yeah,
we just taught people how to get a job.
Right.
It works for any job, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it does, for sure. Especially when you think it wouldn't matter. I mean, that's the lesson that I'm trying to teach my my teenage daughter in sending notes and expressing thanks. And actually coming full circle, it was Van of Brewery Bavana and Vita Mana that actually took time out of his very busy schedule to provide some insight and advice to her on college stuff. And
it's so awesome.
It's so awesome,
Love
right? And so write him a thank you note.
Yeah.
Right? So kind of instilling that the purpose for that for my kids, I think is what I'm trying to do now.
Show people you may care. Show them with some little step.
Yeah.
1 minute of your time. It
Right.
makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Show them how much you care. Dude, this has been awesome.
Great. Well, I hope this went many different directions. I hope it was helpful.
No, this is great. This is how I you know what, man, when I first started these years ago, I always had this almost a template. And I was like, I just like to roll. I don't have a agenda. I don't have a plan. I think that, when you get curious people, that have a common interest together and you rap about stuff, there's a lot of other people that have those same things. And so I appreciate it. I want to go have one of your beers.
I was just going to say, I'm pretty thirsty. I don't know about you.
It's
all right.
It's 5:08. Let's do it, man.
All right.
Thank y'all. More coming soon. See you.